Thank you for downloading this Real Agriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
Okay, there's a lot of farm groups that have been going through Ottawa on what we would call like a lobby week, talking to different parliamentarians on the House and the Senate side, trying to make sure their issues are known, heard, and something can be done about it. One of those groups was Canadian Meat Council and Canadian Pork Council alongside. Joining us right now is the Executive Director at the Canada Pork Council, and it is Stephen Heckbert. Stephen, great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be back. I'm in Saskatchewan today, so lobby week last week, and now back at it at the SaskPork Expo or Symposium this week. So, but great to join you from here in Saskatoon.
Yeah, how day one was yesterday, right? How was the meeting going?
Day one was yesterday. It was very good. Learned a lot. One of the things I like about the pork industry is I learn something every day. It can be exhausting to learn as much as I had to learn yesterday. Lots of research presentations yesterday, but it's really about trying to improve efficiency, improve, operations on farm. And I think important for us to hear that stuff, because sometimes, as you just talked about, we're advocating in Ottawa, right? That's sort of our number one job, is to advocate in Ottawa. But pretty important for us to hear what's happening on the ground to producers, and some of the particular challenges they're facing with respect to certain policies that governments, provincial or federal or municipal, are talking about, and the impact that has on their ability to be competitive.
So in Ottawa, what were some of the key messages that you had for some of the parliamentarians?
So we had really three key messages, Sean. We continued to talk about ASF, and I know sort of folks in agriculture may be thinking to themselves, well, surely they've heard the ASF message, but I think one of the things you learned yesterday in the American election is that consistency is very important. We have to be talking about ASF, its challenges, our efforts to prepare for it, what we need from government should it hit us. That's an ongoing conversation until, hopefully it never arrives. But we will be talking about that until, either the crisis has passed completely or, we're unfortunately in the middle of that crisis. And so we were talking about that, talking a little bit about temporary foreign workers and agriculture's ongoing need for a proper policy around that. A lot of government folks at this time elected from urban and suburban areas, and so may not appreciate fully the challenges of rural areas in terms of retaining and attracting talent. So important for us to talk about temporary foreign workers, not just from the producer perspective, but the processor perspective as well. And then finally, we were talking a little bit about trade and trade implications. And, as you will have seen last night in the U.S. federal election, trade is going to be an issue that we're going to have to talk about. The new President-elect Trump has said that he wants to renegotiate what they call USMCA, what we call CUSMA, and what Mexicans call TMEX. So there is going to be a renegotiation of that, and we need to get our ducks lined up in a row, and we need to be ready for that conversation as soon as we possibly can.
One of the other areas of focus from the campaigning on the Trump side was the talk of tariffs, 10%, 20% tariff on all goods coming to the U.S. Actually, earlier or it was late last week, even talking from a Mexican perspective, maybe that tariff needs to get to 100 if they don't close the northern border. Canada's a little bit of a different situation in that regard. But what does a 10 or 20% tariff do to the Canadian pork industry trying to get goods into the U.S.?
Well, I don't want to get into hypotheticals, Sean, largely because, what politicians say on the campaign trail and then what they actually deliver can be two different things. And we happen to think, pork's integration across the supply chain between our three countries is probably going to help us. There's no active effort among American pork producers to lobby that we be included in that kind of tariff. Even if you listen to folks, I heard some folks on the newscast last night. It was really about if there's a product made somewhere else that Americans make and it's being subsidized by the government then that's where they're looking at those kinds of tariffs. And obviously that doesn't apply in the case of Canadian pork producers. So, we think we've still got a pretty good story to tell, that we're, cost competitive with the United States, but we're not in any way, shape, or form, being unfairly subsidized by our government. So, our hope remains, and hope is not a strategy, but our hope remains that we will work together with our American counterparts and our Mexican counterparts, and hopefully basically just take pork right out of the CUSMA review and avoid that kind of tariff talk, at least in our sector.
From your perspective, is CUSMA or USMCA, however you want to refer to it, is it working for the Canadian pork industry? Are you happy with the agreement as is?
Well, the funny part is that like NAFTA was working pretty well for us. We took what folks asked us to do pretty seriously, right, in this industry. So it was clear that the markets want an integrated supply chain that basically works well across those three borders, and that's what we've done, right? We have an ability to ship live hogs into the United States, either as weanlings or as market hogs for American processors. We import basically an equal amount of American pork back as we send across the border. So our two countries, in terms of their trade, is sort of net equal. It's just that we export about 20% and they import about 20%. So that kind of a cross border is frankly what everyone said they wanted to do. They wanted an integrated supply chain across North America. We delivered. So hopefully that will stand us in good stead, because that really is what economists and what government officials would have asked of any industry in the past years.
Now, you had mentioned, or we were talking about immigration, and the Canadian temporary foreign workers has definitely been under the microscope of some of just Canadians in general.
Yeah.
How important is that program to the pork industry, and making sure that you have that kind of a supply of labor to the industry?
So it's vital. I mean, and it's vital because and I'll give you the example of a plant in Moose Jaw. So you may know that North 49, the new plant in Moose Jaw, advertised in Moose Jaw for folks to apply for one of the 120 positions, and they got 10 applications from within Canada. 10. So that's 110 jobs that if they didn't have access to temporary foreign workforce, that plant would not be able to run today. It would not be able to open today, and it simply wouldn't be functioning today. So it's different, right? Like if you live in Mississauga, you would probably say to yourself, "Oh, look, I mean, why would a Burger King locally need to recruit temporary foreign workers?" And that's true. Why would a Burger King locally in Mississauga need to recruit temporary foreign workers? But if you're in Moose Jaw, or if you're in Nipawin, or if you're in a small town in sort of more rural Canada, there just simply isn't the available workforce locally that you have if you've made a decision to invest in your plant, you've made a decision to invest in your farm. You have to have access to a workforce that's going to come from another country. Maybe it's not going to be a temporary workforce. It's going to be a group of people who want to come to Canada in the long run. And frankly, when you've got this kind of net economic benefit to rural Canada, we think the case is pretty clear, but it is just making sure that we don't get caught up in some, oh my God, we recruited too many international students, which is true. It created a housing problem in urban Canada. But in rural Canada, we don't have the same challenges. We don't have the same housing issues. We don't have the same sort of lack of supply of housing. So it's going to be important for that.
Yeah. So I hear you on all those points. Isn't the concern though as well that lawmakers don't see it with that much nuance? And so if they apply some sort of broad brush solution, it ropes in a sector like agriculture that actually was using the program properly, requires the program, and all of a sudden you're trying to lobby yourself out of that broad-based solution.
Well, that's why, Sean, and I will say this, I think, not to pat ourselves on the back in agriculture, but we've been pretty united about talking about this program for the last 3 years and, laying a good foundation and groundwork. I won't claim any credit specifically for pork on that, but we have been united across the sector. So, we have had good conversations. We think we've reached lawmakers, and that's why you see when they make these announcements, by and large, there is a carve out for agriculture in every one of those announcements. And we think that's just a result of the kinds of conversations. And sometimes, it's hard to sort of see if you're a member of the Canadian Pork Council or member of the Canadian Cattle Association. It can be hard sometimes to see results on the ground if something like that doesn't change. But actually, the big success for us in that is no change. Like if that's a huge win for agriculture that lawmakers heard us and didn't in fact change the program that we've accessed so successfully.
When you were talking during Lobby Week about trade and market access, was it mostly referring to the American market, or are there other areas that you have concerns or you see opportunities in trying to push government people that way?
So we obviously there's ongoing concerns with the European market and our inability to access it because of their expertise at developing non-tariff trade barriers. They're very good at it, and they probably could take they should offer courses in how to do it. But there's also other markets around the world that we'd love to get access to. Thailand, for example, is a market that if we get some access to it, it is covered by some of our trade deals, but it's simply a question of getting the Thailand government to sort of inspect our plants and sort of have those kinds of conversations. And market access for us also in an ASF contest consists of things like zoning agreements, right? So it's about making sure government's going out and getting more zoning agreements and trying to finalize those so that it's not just market access today, but it's about protecting us should we get hit by something like ASF, that those markets could conceivably reopen quite quickly. So from our perspective, it is about supporting the government's Indo-Pacific strategy. It's about making sure that we're talking about getting some assistance and opening other markets that we already have access to. And so that's really what we're focused on.
One more thing before I let you go. California, with this election in the U.S., is there any messaging coming out of CPC when it comes to California's Prop 12 and some of the other states that have similar sorts of legislation, how that's impacting trade potentially down the road, and how does this election potentially factor into that? Sort of put that puzzle together for us.
So, look, I will say this is one area where hopefully this election will get us a farm bill through that will deal with those sorts of state level trade barriers. Right. Our position on Prop 12 has always been, look, we're not going to get into a debate about the particular things, but we have a trade agreement with the United States of America. We don't have a trade agreement with New York and California and Massachusetts and Nevada. So we think that there are national level standards or national level market drivers that frankly, states probably shouldn't get into the business of sort of creating interstate and international trade barriers. So from our perspective, that's long been our advocacy south of the border. It's long been, frankly, and again, on this one, we are entirely aligned with NPPC. So when both of us submitted our comments to the court case around Prop 12, we were 100% aligned, right? Like the notion that you could have a state that has next to no pork production, creating these kinds of regulations that would impact sort of an industry across the country. That's really one of the things that we're hoping the new farm bill, when and if it passes, will deal with these kinds of state level trade barriers.
Great stuff. Stephen, enjoy the meeting of Sask Pork today in Saskatoon. Say hello to everybody there for us at Real Agriculture, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Well, thanks very much, Sean.